The High Inquisitor watched the Shadowseer scratch at the clasps of its faceplate, gore bubbling and frothing up from behind it and running down the silvery surface of the mirror mask. "It's over, Harlequin," Chevak told the dying Xenos. "I don't want to see your face. You will always be just a mask to me." Chevak stood up. He could hear his boots coming across the hull towards him. Ramus Clute arrived, breathless, robes flowing and shotgun pistol held in one hand. "I heard screams," he said. Then he set his eyes on the felled Harlequin, not some paranoid distraction of feverish hallucination, but a living, breathing menace that had been stalking Chevak through time and space. As the Shadowseer's fingertips fell from the mirror mask, and a pool of blood began to gather on the hull under the Harlequin's head, Vespasi Han lived and breathed no more. Chevak nodded. Grabbing the sleeve of the Shadowseer's Harlequin coat and pulling, Chevak tumbled the alien's body out of it. The Eldar's corpse rolled unceremoniously across the polished surface of the sloping hull and then off the edge of the ship. Slipping out of Clute's robes, he handed the paint-smeared garment back to the Inquisitor and pulled on the Harlequin's coat with the static crackle of its domino field. "That's better," the High Inquisitor said to himself. Bronislaw Chevak served the holy orders of the Emperor's Holy Inquisition during the era Indomitus. A highly respected Inquisitor Lord of the Ordo Xenos, regarded as among the foremost experts of Eldar civilization, this student of the Schola Byblos would be mentored by Inquisitor Ferniax until his master's untimely demise during the Second Clestri Forest War. Allying with the living saint of his master's retinue, Joaquin Desdemondra, as he pursued knowledge of the Eldari race, his Treatise of the Teachings of the Unholy, written during 724.M41, is regarded as amongst the foremost tomes detailing Eldar culture. Documenting the societal workings of Craftworld's Iandan, Saimhan, Elatok, Bieltan, and Ulfway, this document comprised of 30 detailed chapters has proven invaluable to many scions of the Imperium in their dealings with these arrogant Xenos. Penning further works such as the Admonitions and Portents, Letters to the Cassophilians and Ancient Wanderers, and the Phoenix Lords of the Eldar Examined. Though a specialist of Eldari culture, Chevak has also studied other species, such as the Tyranids, to better aid his creed's methods of denying their spread. Invited by Farseer Yggdrasil to attend the Harlequin Dance Without End in order to bolster his knowledge of the Laughing God's minions. Following the doom of Iandan, this radical Farseer sought to manipulate this open-minded Inquisitor in efforts to find reprieve from Imperial aggression during their waning years. Mentoring several notable Inquisitors, such as Interrogator Ferdan Kiras, whom pledged 50 years of his life in efforts to aid his then-master. Though many consider this wily Inquisitor as a radical, his efforts to understand the weakness of the alien are undeniable. Aged ravaging his body by the end of the 41st millennium, despite multiple rejuvenate treatments, this veteran of 433 years of service to the Emperor would be confined within a cryogenic suspension suit to enable his continued mobility despite his ever-worsening frailty. Denied the position of Grand Inquisitor despite being the most senior member of the Mobian Conclave, Bronislaw's unorthodox methods, though proven to be effective, have gained him many enemies amongst the Ordos. Dissatisfied with the Imperium's stultification of both technology and repressive ideals, further exacerbating its crumbling bureaucracy, it is Chevak's belief that even the Great Devourer can be soundly expunged should the Emperor once more lead his peoples to combat such a foe. Investigating the crash site upon Dark Taurus of Craftworld Ufuriel in the days leading to Abaddon the Despoiler's 13th Black Crusade. During his excavation of a shrine of Kala Menshikane, Bronislaw gleaned insight into the means of Eldar soul transference. Hoping to apply such knowledge in freeing the Master of Mankind from his torturous vigil upon the Golden Throne, Chevak's efforts would regardless be threatened by a kill team of the Chamber Militant of his Ordo, the Death Watch. The Ordo Xenos dissatisfied with Bronislaw's near-treasonous dealings with the Xenos. His own detachment of Space Marines would defy his orders, Grand Master Ephisto Spect of the Mobius Conclave attempting to rein in this unruly devotee of the Thorian Creed. A troop of Harlequins thwarting the Astartes under command of Captain Quesada of the Aurora chapter in their attempt to destroy the shrine. These peculiar jesters offered Chevak the chance to live out his twilight years within their repository of the Eldar's collective knowledge of chaos, the Black Library. The Black Council of this mysterious craftworld agreeing to allow Chevak to pore through their records under advisement of Farseer Yggdrasil, despite the objections of his stalwart pupil, Ramus Clute, his master accepted the Eldar's invitation. Injecting Chevak with precautionary vaccines for his journey, a powerful strain of meme virus would allow the High Inquisitor to digest entire tomes of knowledge during his stay, now infected with a ravenous neurological hunger for information prolonged by his cryosuit. Now benefiting from a near-photographic memory, peerless pattern recognition, and an insatiable appetite for understanding, though suffering hallucinations as a side effect, the Inquisitor began to proverbially devour each book brought to him with addictive haste. Escorted to the library by Shadowseer Vespasi Han, the mystical effects of the webway wherein the Craftworld resides gradually reversed Bronnislaw's aging as he spent years studying stacks of tomes. Much younger in appearance, as his mobility once more allowed him to walk without the use of his cryosuit, now imbued with vast knowledge on how to combat the ruinous powers, the Farseer's first gambit would be enacted. Captured by the Thousand Sons chief librarian, Arzik Ahriman, who vied for any means to infiltrate the Black Library, his lieutenant, Kardan Zarkos, imprisoned the Inquisitor within their ship, the Impossible Fortress, for years of interrogation. Spitting in the eye of Ahriman, infecting him with the meme virus which still coursed through his own body, though Chevak was now largely inoculated of its side effects, Ahriman unknowingly allowed its influence to set in within his bloodstream. Distracting the exile with uneventful knowledge of the Black Library until warned by Zarkos that he was not himself, the sorcerer, upon hearing of the deception, drew out the virus from his body, refocusing his torture of the High Inquisitor. Confessing his most embarrassing failures, rather than forfeit a single tangible benefit to the Chief Librarian's plots, Ahriman revealed their capture of Joaquin Desdramondra, whose ability to resurrect now allowed for endless torture of her immortal form. Chevak surrendering the Etamamnum-free portal rune codes as his cherished saint burned and revived over and again. Before the High Inquisitor could divulge more potent secrets, the Harlequins of the Red Mask freed him from his confines. Spiriting Chevak away from the Thousand Sons, once more returning him to the Black Library. Now as a living specimen of the Eldar, Chevak languished within the Wraith Tower, spending his days once again studying the lore of chaos. Overseen by the daughter of Farseer Yggdrasil, Guardian Scribe Adara Kay. Now that Arzik Ahriman had breached the webway with insight gleaned from Chevak, the Black Council as a majority demanded his head as penance. Adara Kay entrusting Chevak with a felled tome known as the Atlas Infernal by command of her father. This tome, made of the skin of a silent sister, had been created by humanity during their own webway project, charting their path to seize it for themselves. The oxygen-fed pages within its bindings anathema to any psyker who beheld them. Though aware of the cost of entrusting such an artifact to Chevak, Adara Kay allowed him to open its burnished Auramite confines, unleashing its power. Dying painfully as its contents burned a hole through the wraithbone of the tower. Thanks to Adara Kay's sacrifice, Chevak escaped the Black Library, killing several guards which barred his path, until hurling himself through a webway portal. Using its ever-shifting pages of pulsing arteries and veins to chart his path through the webway, Chevak eventually returned to real space aboard the vessel, Malyscaith, requisitioned by his former pupil, Klute. Petitioning the crew of the rogue trader, Reynet Torres, the Relictor Tekmarine, Saul Torquil, Warpseer Epiphani Malastang, Demon Host Hessian, and the Servo Skull, Farva, Chevak once more led a retinue to investigate the Warp Gate, known as the Lost Fornacle of Urian Mirdius. Marveling at his younger visage, adorned in a stolen Harlequin's coat, Klute allowed his comrades to aid the High Inquisitor's mission as Cadia's plight worsened during the 13th Black Crusade of 999.M41. Thwarting the invasion of a Quicksilver entity as they opened the Lost Fornacle, forcing the Savlar Chemdogs within the Malyscaith to attempt to repel the invader. This mercury entity, known as the Ichneoplasma, or Milk of Malavolcia, had hunted Chevak across 3 sectors of space. Advising Torres to lower the ship's Geller field to allow demonic entities to attack the abomination. With the Ichneoplasm defeated, the Malyscaith escaped its peril, as the crew questioned Chevak on the validity of his arrival. Guilty for allowing Chevak to be captured by the Thousand Sons in the first place, Klute, regardless of his misgivings, allowed his former master to assume command of his forces, Epiphani consulting the Emperor's Tarot to aid in charting their next course. Presenting the Atlas Infernal to his comrades, explaining the properties of the stretched parchment skin within. Forearmed with both navigation of the webway and a means to slay the mightiest of psychers, the crew of the Malyscaith braced as an Iconoclast destroyer arrived in system. A cornate voidcraft drawn by their own ship's automated distress signal from the deactivation of their Geller field. This chariot of the Blood Moons of Korriban, known as Hellbore, refused to ever fire its broadsides, preferring to enact boarding actions alone to prove their lack of cowardice. Counterboarding the bridge of the true berserkers of the Blood God alongside Torquil, Chevak discovered a severed head at the command throne of the Voidcraft, once derived from a World Eater Tech Marine. Defeating its legionary bodyguard as they secured the ship's mnemonic engine cogitator. Upon their return to the Malyscape and destruction of the Hellbore, the Inquisitor's retinue analyzed its prior encounters. Finding evidence of a Thousand Suns Gladius frigate known as Rubrician, commanded by Korben Zarkos, Chevak surmised the sorcerer to be attempting to replicate the rituals made by the Dark Mechanicum cult, known as the Decropsicum. The Malyscape venturing to the Cadian Gate, as Chevak led a kill team through the Lost Fornacle to arrive upon the world of Araxine. The High Inquisitor sought to make a deal within its archaeomarket, Tirakesh. Meeting with the Iandan Ranger, Una Belphaby, trading a clutch of spirit stones taken from Morton Clotho. Now returned the soul of her fallen Autarch, Prince of Aelor. The Rangers accepted Chevak's bargain to peruse their collection of forbidden lore. Presenting him with the Vicaris Sarcophagate, the Skeptoclast, once part of Dark Cardinal Vicaris' collection of tomes. Once opened, a Rubric Marine of the Thousand Suns attacked all present, requiring Torquil to intervene. The Relictor Marine brawling the foe as his allies managed to plunge its form into Araxine's depths. Upon questioning, the Ranger revealed an entity bearing the form of Chevak had met with her weeks prior and already pilfered certain books from the collection. Making do with the torn middle pages of the Chronokets Anatomy and Corpus Vivexa Sectio, such pages were kept as insurance by Belphaby should the impostor of the High Inquisitor offer faulty goods for trade. Revealing their contents to pertain to the first attempted demonic physiological vivisection conducted by the Decropsicum, Chevak realized that Zarkos was attempting to perfect this craft, once fought expunged by the scions of the Grey Knights. The subject of the vivisections, the powerful greater demon of Tzeentch, Mamoshad, also known as the King of Kings, enslaver of the Craven Worlds, and keeper of the Vault Abyssal. Fragments of this Lord of Change were said to be bound within myriad relics. Venturing to the hive world of Ablutrafer via the Lost Fornacle in search of the artifact known as the Black Sovereign of Sierra Sangral. Upon arrival to the Nurgle cultist-ridden palace of the false Castellan, Lord Varicus, signs of its effects were obvious from the outset. The Kingmaker, ensuring its bearer vast wealth, only to be snatched away at the height of their potential. Within the highest peak of the royal apartments, the retinue beheld the bloated form of Lady Sabine Krulda, likely hiding the sovereign within her folds. Allying with the native populace resistance in efforts to dethrone the fell aristocrat, as well as payment of iron ingots. As the cult known as the Unbound besieged the palace, Chevak's forces fought in vain to find the Black Sovereign, retreating as Lady Sabine perished in the fighting. Rescued by their allies, whom in secret had gifted Chevak the artifact before his forces had even set foot within the palace. With their bargain complete, the High Inquisitor returned to the Malyscape in hopes of studying the Sovereign for clues. Interrogating the demonic fragment, unknowingly playing into its hands. Though the hymnals of the Confederation of Light blared, much to the demon's displeasure, the meme virus once again flared within Chevak's bloodstream. Chevak unknowingly smuggling the coin into his Harlequin coat, enabling a chance for its escape. Though the High Inquisitor would be confined for his actions, in time he would realize the connection of the demon's ramblings into a cohesive pattern. Returning to Clute, explaining that the Hellbore had committed vast sacrifices of slaughter orchestrated by the Thousand Suns. 6 million perished upon the world of Pyrrhus via the ingestion of a mutagen, whilst rampant crop growths upon Myrius turned its atmosphere into volatile oxygen-rich firestorms, felling 2 million upon the agri-world. The bone meal of Mamoshad, the cause of such an effect. Chevak, by following the screams, had likewise to the Black Sovereign made abundance followed by disaster. 1 million de-aging to death upon the world of Tituba Prime, as 4 million transformed into Chaos Spawn. The archive worlds of Shengis, Mizar Blue, and Brannigan likewise perished, as wars were fought for its eye, known as the Obsidiculus. The artifact revealing portents of the future, causing the planet to be smothered in atomic fire, killing 2 billion souls. Upon the world of Vegatra 4, the Tzeentchian sorcerer, Elba Draghan, had manipulated its tectonic plates, using a claw of Mamoshad, causing 3.5 million to perish. 2 million lost upon Wormwort, Hive Havagu, Minerva Reach, and the Trigonor Sphere. Zarkos was allowing such rituals to unfold as part of a ritual surrounding Melmoth's world, made in efforts to remake and bind Mamoshad once more as a complete greater demon. Clute revealing his firing of the Black Sovereign into the nearest sun, unknowingly furthering the plans of Zarkos. With all haste, Chevak used the Lost Fornacle to venture to the Inquisitorial outpost known as Nemesis Tessera. The first mortal souls to roam the dungeon archives of the Stronghold in 200 years. This archive of demonic weapons and artifacts had been constructed following Abaddon's first Black Crusade and housed a relic which would prove crucial to Chevac's goals. Astartes of the Grey Knights chapter attacking such interlopers as Chevak abandoned his men in search of his prize. Though Torquil attempted to best the warriors of Titan wielding a secure demon blade, the Relictor would prove no match for 4 such space marines. Slaying a Justicar with Adram Hessian the demon host, Chevak returned in time to save the Tech Marine, Clute and Hessian, wielding a strange Beljar stasis casket known as the Omega- Black Soul Embryo. This discovery of Inquisitor Perfida Vank, releasing the essence of a cloned null entity which proved devastating to any Psyker which suffered its glare. Each Grey Knight veteran clawed at their armor as violent screams ensured their painful deaths. Escaping the second wave of Tempestus Scion stormtroopers back through the Lost Fornacle, now renegades of the Holy Ordos, this band of rebels ventured to Malmuth's world in order to avert disaster for the good of the Imperium. Apologizing for his deceptions to his comrades, knowing that they would not have willingly ventured into the bowels of such a stronghold. Regardless of his sleights of hand, the crew of the Malyscape aided Chevac's journey into the hands of the waiting Thousand Suns. The entire planet of Malmuth's world acting as a birthing cradle for the Greater Demon, excavated by Nurglite cultists at the behest of the 15th Legion's deceptions. Upon reaching the heart of their toil, Chevac would be captured by Zarkos, whom housed within him the mind of Ahriman remotely. Attempting to sacrifice the High Inquisitor and claim the Atlas Infernal for their own designs, upon burning Chevac's Harlequin coat and probing his mind to where the tome was hidden, the cunning soul looked to the hidden compartment within the servo skull of Father. Opening its compartment to find the Omega- embryo waiting inside, though Ahriman endured 10,000 years worth of soul flaying before withdrawing his essence, Korban Zarkos was utterly destroyed by the device. Turning its gaze upon the nascent form of Mamoshad, fleeing as its ill-formed body attempted to devour him, the Greater Demon perished following prolonged exposure to the Black Soul embryo, with Shadowseer Vespasi Han aiding his escape through a portal. Confronted by the Harlequins once more during the Malyscape's dry dock within the Webway, Chevak lured Vespasi Han into the reach of the Atlas Infernal, killing him and wounding many of his troop. Thanking the Harlequin for saving his life on multiple occasions during his death throes. Regardless of the Laughing God's protection, Bronus Lord Chevak refused to be a pawn of its machinations in his efforts to bring justice to Arzek Ahriman. Allowing the meme virus to continue to course through his veins, now clad in Vespasi's forfeit overcoat. To this day, the High Inquisitor continues to sunder all manner of chaos-tainted foes as the pages of the Atlas Infernal chart his next course of action.